Hello, my name is Jonathan Coe, and I'm here to tell you the difference between hardware and software. Now, depending on no matter what computer device you are using to consume this information, I just want to let you know, according to my audience survey, some of you can't even distinguish the difference between hardware and software. That being said, however, according to my audience survey, all of you do realize that you do use hardware and software at some point in your daily life. Now, how do you explain the difference? Well, I found out that there are at least two key distinctions that can help you determine the difference. And those two differences are between its accessibility and their function. First, I'm going to explain to you how do you access the two. So, how do you access hardware and software? I'm going to first explain to you how do you access hardware. The way you access hardware, according to the online newspaper source from learn.g2.com, hardware is a quote a physical part of your computer system, end quote. So, what does that mean? It means that whatever you have connected you connected and plugged into your computer, and if you can physically touch it, that's hardware. Some examples that are pretty common hardware that you might see on a computer system is your keyboard, your mouse, a monitor, and obviously your computer. And obviously there are some other hardwares that you or someone else might have connected to that you might not find uncommon, but whatever, if it's still connected to your computer, that is hardware. Now, how do you access software? Well, software, according to the same newspaper online article I found from learn.g2.com, I quote, programs and applications that you run on a physical device, end quote. So, what does that mean? Well, if you have a program or app installed into your computer, that's a software. Some softwares are that you might typically find on a computer or Google Chrome, whatever web browser you have, an email program, a calendar program, a calculator program, and of current times, Zoom. Now, obviously there's those common ones you might find today, but you should also be aware of the operating system that is the software. Some operating systems are the most common operating system you might find is Windows and even iOS. Now that you so again, how do you access hardware and software? Well, basically, for hardware, if you can touch it, it's hardware. If it's software, if you can access it through your computer, it's software. Now that you know how to access one, let me explain to you the function of the two. So, how does hardware function? Well, basically, it provides input and code for your software. Before I explain to you how hardware works and provides the input and code, I should explain to you what is code. According to Charles Petzold, author of Code, the Hidden Language of Computer Hardware and Software, he states the definition of code, which is, I quote, a system of symbols and rules used to represent instructions to a computer, end quote. That being said, here's an example of hardware providing input to code to software. A good example is that when you're typing on your keyboard, obviously, as you push a button, something is produced. And that thing that's produced is whatever button you press, and that'll be a symbol, character, or letter. Obviously, you pushing a button should produces input and code for the software. And the software obviously takes it and it produces that letter or number or character. That being said, the software functions by taking that input and code from the hardware and it produces an output. And here's another example of how software functions. Your mice. So just like the keyboard, you push on a button, a letter, character, or number is produced. You moving the mice produces movement for the cursor. You left clicking on a mice provides input. That software. You clicking on left click on a mice provides input and code to say for the software saying that you want to select something. So on and so forth, whatever other application you do with the mice. Now that I explained to you a little bit about how hardware and software function and how you can access them, here's a few examples that explain to you that should give you a good understanding of the difference between hardware and software. One of the good examples that I can think of is, say someone wants to build a computer. According to the magazine article from Wired.com, there are 8 components to build a computer. 7 of them are hardware, 1 of them is software. Those 7 hardware components consist of the CPU, the motherboard, the memory, the storage, the graphics card, the power supply, and the case. The 8th is the last bit, which is the software, which is the operating system. Obviously, as mentioned before, operating system can determine which computer you want, but for more than likely, if you're building a computer, you're more than likely going to install Windows. As for all the seven other hardware, there are thousands and potentially millions out there in the world, but that what they all have in common, besides their function, is that they can all be touched and they can all be used and handled by you physically touching it, which makes it hardware. Now that I have explained to you to help you explain to you that what are some good distinctions between hardware and software, now you should have a good understanding of how you can distinguish them in your daily life. In conclusion, you should now be able to tell the difference between the two. Now that between the two when you are using a computer. Now that you fully understand the difference between the two, you should now know that when you're using a computer, it requires more than just pushing buttons to make something happen. Thank you.